Do you know how many people live without truly living, moving through days as though they are mere shadows of themselves, weighed down by fears they cannot name, shackled by expectations they did not choose? They rise, they labor, they consume, yet the fire of their own soul flickers faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if life itself is happening elsewhere, somewhere beyond their grasp. And yet, even in the quiet despair of such existence, the human spirit is not without remedy. There exists a path, subtle yet profound, to affirm life, to whisper yes to existence itself, even when suffering presses like a storm upon the chest. To say yes to life is not a naive proclamation of blind optimism. It is an act of defiance, a conscious stance taken by the soul against despair. It is a recognition that suffering is not an enemy to be annihilated, but a companion that may, paradoxically, teach the deepest lessons. Here lies the first way to say yes, to embrace responsibility. Not the kind of responsibility dictated by social expectation or external authority, but the responsibility to oneself, the commitment to choose one's attitude, to act with intention, to assert freedom in the face of circumstance. Viktor Frankl observed in the darkest hours of the camps that those who retained a sense of purpose, no matter how small, were able to endure beyond the capacity of others. To embrace responsibility is to reclaim life from the chaos, to say, silently but resolutely, "I will determine the meaning of my journey, even if the world conspires to obscure it." This embrace begins quietly. Perhaps it is in the refusal to surrender to bitterness when wronged, the decision to speak truth even when silenced, or the courage to act with compassion when indifference dominates. Responsibility is the tether that connects the individual to the currents of life, allowing the spirit to navigate suffering without being consumed by it. In the deliberate exercise of freedom, one discovers that no circumstance, however cruel, can fully erase the autonomy of the soul. Every choice becomes a seed planted against despair, a testament to the indestructibility of the inner self. The second way to say yes is to cultivate gratitude for what is given, even amid loss. Not a shallow, fleeting acknowledgement, but a deep recognition that life, in all its complexity, offers moments of beauty, connection, and insight, even within suffering. Those who can see the glint of meaning in small acts, a smile, a memory, a fleeting moment of serenity, are the ones who continue to move forward when others fall back into resignation. Here, gratitude becomes an act of rebellion against the tyranny of circumstance. It refuses to allow suffering to dictate the worth of the day. It whispers that life, with all its imperfections and trials, remains worthy of affirmation. To cultivate gratitude is to open the door to hope, to recognize that meaning is not reserved for the fortunate, but is accessible even in the crucible of adversity. Yet, to live fully is also to confront suffering directly, to look into its face without flinching, to name it, to hold it tenderly, and recognize its lessons. This is the third way to say yes, the courage to transform suffering into purpose. Life will not exempt anyone from pain. It is the human condition that wounds, loss, and disappointment will arrive unbidden. But the soul that acknowledges suffering and seeks meaning within it transcends victimhood. Viktor Frankl's reflections are clear. Suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning. The individual who discovers a reason, however small, to endure, whether for love, creation, faith, or moral conviction, turns suffering into a vehicle for growth rather than a trap for despair. This act of transformation is not instant. It is forged in the ongoing conscious engagement with life's challenges, a deliberate affirmation that one's response defines the essence of being far more than the events themselves. To say yes to life is, therefore, an intricate dance between responsibility, gratitude, and the courageous confrontation of suffering. It is a refusal to surrender one's interior freedom, a steadfast claim on the sovereignty of the self. It is the quiet yet profound choice to live fully, moment by moment, even when the body trembles and the heart aches. And in this choice, there emerges a resilience that no circumstance can break, a victory that is invisible to the world, yet unmistakable to the one who has claimed it. Consider this. How many moments have passed, unnoticed, that could have been filled with deliberate choice, with gratitude, with courage? How many small acts of affirmation could have lit the darkness within? Life asks nothing more than that the individual rises to meet it, that the spirit says yes in the presence of suffering. That meaning is sought where it can be found. In doing so, the ordinary becomes sacred, the painful becomes instructive, and the human being discovers a freedom untouched by circumstance, a freedom that no one can take away. To say yes to life in the face of suffering is to acknowledge the shadow without allowing it to dictate the light. It is to understand that pain is not a punishment, but a teacher, a silent force that can reveal the contours of strength that lay dormant within the human soul. The individual who practices this affirmation does not seek comfort in avoidance or distraction. Instead, they confront reality with unwavering eyes, aware that the rawness of existence contains the very substance from which meaning is carved. Every tear shed, every heartbreak endured, every quiet desperation met with resolve becomes a testament to the inviolable spirit. This confrontation with suffering demands honesty. The world may offer soothing illusions, temporary reliefs, diversions that dull the ache, but the soul recognizes these for what they are, fleeting reprieves that do not transform. True affirmation arises from facing the uncomfortable truth. Life is often cruel, random, and unpredictable, yet within it lies the possibility for purpose. Those who cultivate this clarity discover that it is not the absence of suffering that defines a fulfilled life, but the capacity to respond to suffering with intentionality. You may feel trapped by circumstances, overwhelmed by loss, or powerless against forces beyond control. But within the narrowest of confines, there exists an inviolable space where choice remains. It is in this space that the word yes finds its most profound expression. Affirmation of life is also an ethical endeavor. To say yes is to commit oneself to acts that extend beyond the self, to embrace responsibility toward others as a reflection of one's own humanity. Even in the darkest of times, when despair gnaws at the edges of perception, a deliberate act of kindness, a gesture of empathy, a decision to bear witness to another's suffering without turning away, becomes an affirmation of meaning. The human spirit is interconnected. It is through engagement, compassion, and service that one transcends the limitations imposed by personal pain. Each act of moral courage becomes a thread in the tapestry of resilience, weaving a legacy that suffering cannot erase. Consider the paradox. The deeper the suffering, the more profound the opportunity to affirm life. Those who have witnessed the abyss, who have felt the weight of hopelessness pressing down, often emerge with a clarity unattainable to those who glide through existence unchallenged. Pain has a way of sharpening vision, of illuminating the things that matter, of stripping away the trivial and exposing the essential. Viktor Frankl's insight is stark and luminous. In the absence of meaning, suffering becomes unbearable. Yet when even the smallest purpose is recognized, the heaviest burden can be borne. Your own capacity for endurance is not found in comfort, but in the conscious engagement with what is difficult, in the persistent assertion that life, in all its imperfections, deserves a courageous yes. This journey, however, is neither simple nor linear. There are moments when affirmation feels impossible, when despair beckons like a siren promising the relief of surrender. In these moments, one must return to the fundamentals, the responsibility to choose, the gratitude for what remains, the courage to find meaning even amid loss. It is not the grand gestures alone that constitute a life affirmed, but the accumulation of small, deliberate acts that reflect the resilience of the spirit. Each morning that one rises, each conversation that seeks connection rather than isolation, Each moment in which patience triumphs over frustration, each instance of clarity amidst confusion, becomes an affirmation of the sacredness of life itself. You are invited to notice the subtle ways this affirmation manifests. The quiet gratitude for air that fills the lungs, for a roof over the head, for a single moment of laughter or beauty, for the enduring capacity to hope. You are invited to practice the courage to face suffering head-on, to ask the penetrating questions about what is truly valuable, and to take responsibility for choosing how to respond. The word yes is not a passive acceptance of what comes, but an active, conscious engagement with the entirety of experience, the light and the darkness, the joy and the sorrow, the triumphs and the defeats. It is a declaration that, though external circumstances may oppress, the interior domain of the human spirit remains unconquered. As the individual walks this path, something remarkable occurs. Suffering loses its power to enslave, and life's apparent chaos becomes a canvas for meaning. Freedom, that sacred capacity Frankl so cherished, is realized not in the absence of hardship, but in the courage to exercise choice within it. And as each day is met with deliberate affirmation, a subtle transformation takes place. The self is no longer victim to circumstance, but co-creator of significance. You may not control the world, but you always control your response, and in that control, you discover the victory no one can steal. To fully embrace the practice of saying yes to life is to recognize that suffering and purpose are not adversaries, but companions on the path to authentic existence. There will be moments when the heart is heavy with grief, when the body aches under the weight of adversity, when despair whispers that the struggle is pointless. Yet, it is precisely in these moments that the affirmation of life shines brightest, for it is in the deliberate act of choosing to act with integrity, to persevere, to love, to create meaning, that the human spirit asserts its irreducible power. You may not be able to control the storm around you, but you can govern the landscape of your soul. Saying yes to life requires courage, not only to endure suffering, but also to transform it. Frankl understood that the human being possesses a profound capacity for what he termed tragic optimism, the ability to maintain hope, to find meaning, and to assert freedom even in the face of unavoidable pain. This does not suggest naive positivity or denial. It demands a rigorous confrontation with reality. To affirm life in suffering is to recognize that the weight of existence carries lessons, that the trials endured are the soil from which purpose can grow, and that the act of finding significance in hardship elevates the spirit above mere survival. You are challenged to perceive beyond the immediate discomfort, to peer into the horizon where suffering intersects with significance, and to declare that your life, your choices, and your responses matter. There are three paths, subtle yet profound, by which one can consistently say yes to life, even in the face of suffering. The first is the path of responsibility, to take ownership of choices and actions, to act in alignment with one's principles, and to cultivate integrity as a form of inner freedom. Even when circumstances are hostile, when control is stripped away, the decision to act meaningfully remains yours. Freedom exists not in the absence of constraint, but in the conscious embrace of responsibility, the recognition that within every limitation lies a sphere where the spirit cannot be touched. The second path is the path of love, to connect, to care, to extend oneself beyond the self, even when the heart bears wounds. Love is not always romantic or sentimental. It is the unwavering commitment to recognize and honor the humanity in others, to see potential and value where despair seeks to blind. In offering compassion, the individual discovers an inner wealth untouched by fortune, a sanctuary of grace and dignity no oppressor can confiscate. Through love, suffering becomes a medium for profound empathy, and connection becomes a shield against the isolation that amplifies pain. The third path is the path of purpose, to seek and act upon that which gives life significance, to create, to serve, to manifest one's values in tangible ways. Purpose is the beacon that guides through darkness, the axis upon which endurance pivots. It is found in the careful cultivation of craft, in acts of courage, in the silent moments of reflection that clarify what is essential. When suffering is reframed through purpose, pain ceases to be merely endured and instead becomes a catalyst for growth, a teacher that exposes the depths of resilience and the magnitude of the human spirit. You are called to walk these paths with awareness, to practice the discipline of saying yes, not as a fleeting gesture, but as a continuous commitment. Each choice to act responsibly, each moment of intentional love, each pursuit of meaningful purpose reinforces a fortress within that external forces cannot breach. In this inner citadel, freedom, dignity, and hope reside unassailable. No circumstance, no misfortune, no tyranny of fate can strip away what has been cultivated through conscious affirmation. Ultimately, the courage to say yes to life, to embrace responsibility, love, and purpose in the midst of suffering leads to liberation. You transcend the role of mere survivor and become the author of your own destiny, the arbiter of your own meaning. Suffering is no longer a curse, but a teacher. Life is no longer a series of random events, but a stage upon which the spirit exercises freedom and courage. The individual who walks this path discovers that the greatest victory is not measured in wealth, recognition, or external conquest, but in the unconquerable inner life that persists through every trial. And so, even when the world presses in with its injustices and sorrows, even when grief threatens to paralyze, you retain a sanctuary no one can invade. You choose your attitude, affirm your purpose, and live with the profound understanding that life's hardships are inseparable from the opportunity to transcend them. The inner victory, forged in suffering and sharpened by conscious choice, is yours alone. A victory impervious to theft, immune to oppression, eternal in its quiet, resolute strength. The one who has a why can endure almost any how,